So it looks as though, thank you, Shadow Treasurer. He's just joined us. The division must have been finished. So just put in context, Angus Taylor has joined us. He's the Shadow Treasurer, the former Minister for Energy. He lives just up the road in the seat of Hume, and it's been a great pleasure, Shadow Treasurer, that you can join us on such a critical year as we deal with taxes, cost of living and housing and so forth. So without further ado, I'd welcome the Shadow Treasurer to speak to us, and then we'll have a Q&A afterwards. Thank you so much, Angus. Welcome.
Well, thank you, Danita, for your invitation, but thank you also for your advocacy and your organisation's advocacy, which I think is unbelievably important, particularly at this time. I'm acutely conscious of it because the construction sector, the building sector, housing is so crucial in my own electorate. I've got one of the fastest growing electorates in Australia, a huge amount of building work going on, and of course that means a huge amount of people working in the building industry. So your advocacy, particularly at a time like this, and I'm sure you've been talking about this over the last couple of days, I think is phenomenally important. It's probably never been a more important time, in my time in politics at least, than now for your industry, the role it plays and the advocacy and needs. So thank you for the work you do. Look, it's no secret to anyone here that right now we face some unparalleled economic challenges, and your sector is right at the forefront of that. And the truth of the situation right now, I think, needs to be laid out plainly, because it's not something that I've experienced in my lifetime, certainly outside of COVID. It is a very special set of circumstances in many ways, because we haven't experienced it. We've experienced bits of what we're seeing at the moment, but not all at once. The harsh reality is that in the last 18 months, the real disposable income, that's the standard of living, of the average Australian household has fallen by 8.6%. So if I'd said to your average Australian family, you're going to be almost 10% worse off in 18 months' time, that's about $8,000 for each Australian. I think they would have just said, no, that's not what happens in Australia. It's not like that. We're a lucky country. It's always better than that around here. But, maybe Argentina. But that is exactly what's happened. And in some ways it's snuck up on people because it's come from three different directions, all of which have coincided. The first is a very sharp increase in prices, almost 10% in that 18-month period. It'll be 10% in the very, very near future if it's not already there. So that's a big increase in prices, and of course that in itself doesn't erode standards of living unless wages don't go up as fast. But of course they haven't gone up as fast, nothing like it. So you had a big hit to real wages, in that time frame. The second thing that's happened is they've seen 12 interest rate increases. And for many that was on the back of guidance that there weren't going to be anything like that, or none at all for some time. So they'd locked in a view, or those who were lucky locked in interest rates, but they're certainly locked in a view that we were going to continue in a period of very low interest rates. And the third, which I think is the least expected, it was the one that when the national accounts came out late last year, lots of economists got very excited about because it was phenomenal. It was not what anyone expected, whereas a 27% increase in personal income taxes being paid in 18 months. 27% increase in personal income taxes being paid in the last 18 months. So part of that was people got a lot less money back in their tax return. So I know when I polled my kids, I said, what do you see with your tax return? Oh, Dad, we're all talking about it. No one got anything this year. Last year they did. That was a big hit. But the second piece, which was a bit more insidious, was the silent work of bracket creep. And this is ugly. This is government taking your money without telling you. And as someone who comes from outside of politics. I'm a relative newcomer to politics. I'd never worked as a staffer. I'd never spent more than a few hours in this building before I became a Member of Parliament. I'd always thought it was one of the most insidious sources of tax of all, because it's government taking your money without telling you about it. Your incomes go up into a higher tax bracket, or often not at all. More of it goes into the highest tax bracket you've already got. And your average tax rate goes up. You didn't even notice. What you do notice is your bank account doesn't have as much in it as you thought, particularly at a time when real wages are going backwards. I mean, it's all well and good if you're paying a higher tax rate because your real wages have gone up, but that's not what's been happening. And those three things combined, sharp increase in prices, sharp increase in interest rates, and a 27% increase in personal income taxes being paid. Wonderful for the government, terrific for the government budget, but absolutely disastrous for household budgets. And that is the prospect we're facing right now. And the truth is that Australians are trying to deal with this by maintaining their standard of living, their consumption. It's been remarkably resilient. With an 8.6% reduction in personal disposable income, you'd expect there'd be a significant reduction in consumption. Well, there hasn't been, because people are hoping like hell this is temporary. But let's look at it. Are interest rates going to go back to where they were? Is that 10% increase in prices going to reverse? Are prices going to go down? Maybe for a couple of things, hopefully for some building materials, but no, they're not. That's not reversing. Inflation might come down, but prices reversing? No, that's not happening. And is the government going to give back all of that 27% increase in personal income taxes? No. I mean, what Albanese's promising now is around half of Limedo that went low to middle income tax offset. So no, that's not coming back. So how much of this is going to be reversed? Very little at most. Very little at most. And I don't think that's an adjustment that Australians have fully come to terms with yet. And as they do, they will have to adjust their standards of living, their lifestyles. And this is a really cathartic moment. Now, here's the real implication of this for me as a policymaker, for government in this country. The era of solving these problems by throwing money around is over. We've been through this. I mean, my career, to a large extent, politicians felt that the answer to problems was throwing some money around. But the truth is that when you've had that kind of hit, $8,000 for the average Australian, 20 or 30,000 for someone with a mortgage, by the way, way more the hit they're taking. The truth is that this is a problem different from many we have faced in recent decades, where the only answer is good economic management. That's it. That is the only way you can reverse that quantum of loss of standard of living. There's no other way. So what is that? Well, I'd put industrial relations right near the top of the list. Hugely important for your sector. And when I look at your sector right now, I mean, I don't need to tell you, you're seeing a rash of insolvencies. We've seen a very, very sharp increase in those. The St Hilliers just in the last 48 hours or so, of course. It's clear there's still a long way to go in the construction sector in terms of how this plays out. But I think industrial relations has to be one of the crucial areas where we can't afford right now to go in the wrong direction. In fact, we have to go in the right direction. The idea that you put union officials in charge of a workplace at a time when labour productivity has collapsed. I mean, lots of people like to talk about that, the long run grind of productivity being slower. Now, we've seen a reversal of labour productivity in this country, the likes of which I haven't seen in my time. And this is not the time to put union officials in charge of the workplace. Absolutely not. But the legislation that the government has put through and will continue to put through is, I would argue, doing exactly that. We need to make sure fiscal policy is sensible. We need tax policies that encourage and reward hard work and aspiration. I mean, the reason why the Hawke government took the top marginal tax rate down from 60 cents to 47 cents was to reward aspiration and hard work. This was bipartisan. Aspiration was a bipartisan belief in this place. Not anymore. We've got to get back to that. And that's why we will take to the next election tax policies that reward hard work, that reward aspiration, that encourage Australians to get out there, invest, build businesses, create jobs, create opportunities, not just for themselves, but for others. And this is the point about economics that is lost in the modern political culture. It's not zero-sum. When one of you in your business gets out there, goes hard and does well, and creates jobs, you're creating opportunity just not for yourself, you're creating it for others. This is the beauty of aspiration and hard work and the things that I believe in that are the centrepiece of the economy that we've got to get back to. So tax policy, spending. You don't spend your way to a better economy. $209 billion of additional spending since Labor came to power. $20,000 for each Australian household. We've opposed many of those things in the Parliament. And the Prime Minister gets up and carries on about how we're opposing things. Well, that's because they're the wrong thing to do. That's because they're the wrong thing to do. So you've got to get your spending policy right. Immigration, really difficult issue in your sector because I've come from one of the great immigrant towns of Australia, not far south of here at Cooma. I would argue, one of the greatest immigrant towns of Australia. It was built by immigrants in the 1950s and 60s with the Snowy scheme. I grew up with those kids and just amazing, wonderful, aspirational people. But immigration policy has to be aligned to our ability to build houses and infrastructure and support that. Otherwise, what happens is, I think this is a component of what we're seeing right now, fixed price contracts where your costs have gone up far faster than you can deal with. You've got to get these things aligned. And in area after area, broader productivity policy, competition policy, you've got to make sure that you get back to basics, a back to basics economic agenda that focuses on how we re-establish prosperity and aspiration as the centrepiece of our economy, which benefits every single Australian, even those who are not working. If those who are going hard pay more tax because you're working harder, you built your business, you're employing more people, everyone else who benefits from that through pensions in hospitals and schools and so on, they get the security they need. So this is the Australia I believe in. This is the Australia I came to politics to fight for. It's clear the fight's on. And what I've been particularly pleased about with the Master Builders is you are an organisation that sells aspiration. That's what you do. That's your product. Well, I believe in that product, and I want to work with you closely over the coming months and the year in the lead up to the next election to make sure we have policies that go to the next election that, regardless of who wins, we get a better Australia on the back of it. Of course, I believe very firmly that our side of politics is the best one to deliver that. But regardless, we've all got to fight for those basic values that I believe in, that I think that your industry has stood for a long time. If we're to solve the challenge we have in front of us, as I'm always keen to say, Australia is a truly wonderful, wonderful country. I couldn't have wanted to have grown up and lived in any other country in the world, and there is no problem we have that can't be solved with better policy and a sharper focus on the things that really matter. So thank you very much, Danita. I think very happy to take some questions as well. So.